Hi guys, today's lesson is on graphing exponential functions. You've seen the graphs, you know growth, decay, you've figured out how to shift things, you've done a lot. So this is the last part of this unit, and after break we will have a test or quiz, and then we're going to move on to logs. Okay, so for this first example, part A, this is like Algebra 1 review. So we're just going to make a table of values. So f of x equals 2 to the x. We're going to plug in -3, and we're going to get 1/8. Plug in -2, we're going to get 1/4, 1/2, 1, 2, 4, and 8. All right, then we just plot them. So -3, 1/8, -2 is at 1/4. These numbers, these are very terrible, just FYI, because it's very hard to draw dots on here. 1, 2, 2, 4, and 3, 8. Okay, so as you can see, it's a growth function. We want to make sure we also draw in the horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. And we're going to connect, and there's our first graphing problem. All right, our domain is -infinity to infinity, and our range is from 0 to infinity. And your horizontal asymptote is at y equals 0. Okay, super basic growth function. And now we're going to do a super basic decay function. 1/2 to the -3rd, that is 8. 1/2 to the -2 is 4. To the -1 is 2. 1. Then we get 1/2, 1/4, and 1/8. Okay, so -3, 8, -2, 4, -1, 2, 0, 1. Then once I get to these guys, it gets a little harder. 2, down, down. Okay, again, our y-intercept, or our horizontal asymptote, is at y equals 0. I'm going to connect the dots, and there we go. All right, so it's there. We know it's decay. Our domain is -infinity to infinity, and our range is 0 to infinity. Again, same horizontal asymptote. Okay, so now what happens if we take a new function, this g of x? What's going to happen to it? Okay, how's it going to be different from our original function? Well, we're just going to use our transformation rules. So this negative in the front is x-axis reflection, which affects the y, right? The +3, that's a shift to the left, 3 units, right? It's the opposite when x is positive. And the +2 is a shift up 2, which is also our horizontal asymptote. Okay, if you knew the basic points, how could you get the points on the graph of g of x? So this is going back to unit 1, where we're just going to take the original x, y, and we're going to write a new rule, okay? So if we shifted left, right, and it was an x-axis reflection, so that affects the y, but our x is going to be x -3, okay? And your y rule is going to be -y +2, okay? So we're going to take the original values, and you're going to see the next slide. We're going to plug them in to get our new points, okay? All right, so let me just rewrite that. It was, I forget already, x -3, -y +2. Okay, so if we take our original x, I'm going to start with -2. I'm using this table right here. Don't worry about the -3 and the 3. That was just, showing you can pick as many points as you want, but we can stick to these points for now. All right, so -2 -3 is going to give me -5. Then we're going to have to take the 1/4, make it negative, add it to 2. So So that's like saying 2 minus 1/4, so that's 2 minus a quarter. Oh, duh, not 3. 2 minus a quarter is $1.75. Where are we? X is -1, so -1 minus 3 is -4. -1/2 plus 2, so that's 2 minus 1/2 is 1.5. X is 0. 0 minus 3 gives me -3. And then y was 1, so -1 plus 2 is 1. 1 minus 3 gives me -2. -2 plus 2 gives me 0. And then 2 minus 3 is -1. -4 plus 2 is -2. Okay. Now the only thing I don't see, as you should be able to, you can see it too, there's no y-intercept. So if your new table doesn't have the y-intercept, just throw it in there or throw it in the graph, because it'll make your graph a little bit more precise. So if you plug in 0, you should get -6. Okay. And -1, -2. Okay, so now we're just going to take those points. We're going to graph them. So -5, 1.75 is right about there. -4, 1.5 is here. -3, 1. -2, 0. -1, -2, and then 0, -6. Okay, so you can see that it's curving, and then you should also see that your horizontal asymptote is at y equals 2. So we know our graph's never going to touch that. And we're going to connect the dots. And there's our graph. Beautiful. All right, our domain, -infinity to infinity, and our range is going to be -infinity to 2. Okay. Next, just going to try one more, and then you guys are going to try. Okay, so h of x. So let's talk about the transformations first. Okay, so you see the -x, so that's y-axis reflection, right? And that affects the x values, right? It's actually shifted to the left, because if you took the negative out, this would be x plus 3, so it's a shift left 3, and then it's shifted down 2. Okay, so if we wanted to make a rule, our x would be, so we had to y-axis reflection, and we're shifted left, so it's -x minus 3 is our new rule. I don't like that. I'm going to do a comma. And then our y values just shifted down 2, so it's going to be y minus 2. Okay. All right, keep in mind, when your x is negative, do you notice it's the same exact thing as the exponent? Okay, so now let's go back. We're going to take our parent function and plug those values in to our new function. Okay, so -2, we plug it in, so we get +2, 2 minus 3 gives us -1. If we plug in the original 1/4, 1/4 minus 2 is -1 3/4, or -1.75. If we plug in -1, we get +1 minus 3, so we get -2, and then we get -1.5, or -1.5. We plug in 0, we get -3. I'm assuming you can start to see a pattern with the x's. All right, 1 minus 2 gives me -1. I get -4 because it's -1 minus 3, and then we get 0 here, and then plugging in 2 gives me -5, and plugging in 4 gives me 2. Okay, again, the y-intercept is not included, so I'm just going to add it in. So if you plug in 0, you get -1.875, and I use my handy dandy calculator for that. Okay, so now let's plot the points. So -1, -1 and 3/4, -2 and -1.5. No. -3, -1, -4, 0. Oh my gosh, if I press too hard. -4, 0, -5, +2, and then 0, 0, -1.875. Really, really close to 2 because our horizontal asymptote is at -2. Okay, so now we're going to connect and extend it. All right, and there's our graph. So the domain is -infinity to infinity, and our range is from -2 to infinity. Okay, so the next example, you're going to pause and give it a shot yourself. I'm going to advance the slide, and it's going to have the answer so you can check your graph and check your table. Okay, go ahead and pause. All right, make sure you check your answers. So the original, here's the parent function, and then what should have, your new points once you plug those in. Okay, domain and range are down here. Okay, all right, I'm going to do one example with a decay with the 1/2. So we're going to do the same exact thing, but now it's just with 1/2 x. And here's our parent function, which really isn't a parent, but you know, it's close enough. Okay, so we're going to figure out our shifts, our transformation. So this negative in front, that's x-axis reflection. And x -2, that means we're shifted to the right. So right 2, and then the +2, we're going up 2. Okay, so our rule to get our new points, with our x, we're only changing it, adding 2 because we shifted to the right, so x +2. And then our y becomes negative because of the x-axis reflection, and then it's shifted up. Okay, we're going to do some plugging and chugging. If you plug in your first x, -2, that gives you 0. We plug in 4, we get -2. We plug in -1, we get 1. Plug in 2, we get 0. Plug in 0, we get 2. -1 plus 2 gives me 1. Plug in 1, we get 3. Then we get 1.5. So -1/2 plus 2. Plug in 2, we get 4, and gives us 1.75. Okay, so notice that the y-intercept is there, so we don't have to add it. If you want, you can start with your, your horizontal asymptote, which is at +2. Okay, and then we can plot our points. So 0, -2, 1, 0, 2, 1, 3, 1.5, and 4, a lot closer. All right, so it's a growth, and it's never going to touch that +2. All right, so our domain's -infinity to infinity, and our range -infinity to 2. Okay, so you guys are going to try an example like this. Now, go ahead and pause, give it a shot. The next slide will be the answer, so you can double check. Make sure you send me any questions, right? There's your answer, there's your graph. And then you'll see it on your guided notes, but I did summarize everything so you can see your simple steps. So if possible, make a table of values of the parent function, which it depends on the problem, so it could change. And if it's not possible, just create a new table with simple values of x, just like the first example when we first started the lesson. Make sure you include the y-intercept. And then, but if you're using the parent function, you're going to use your transformation rules to make a new table. Add that y-intercept again. Make sure you have your horizontal asymptote, and then plot and graph. And don't forget to do the domain and range, especially if it's asked of you. All right, guys, I hope you have a great day. Spring break starts tomorrow, which is awesome. You will have an assignment, but it's I promise it's not that bad, and it won't take you more than an hour. All right, have a great day. It's late. I'm going to bed. Bye-bye.